Welcome to Talking Cars. I'm Jennifer Stockberger.
I'm Ryan Pawlikowski.
I'm Emily Thomas.
So on this special episode, Ryan, Emily, and I got the pleasure of sitting down with automotive journalist Elizabeth Blackstock. Elizabeth is the breaking news editor for Jalopnik. She's the managing editor of a website called The Girl's Guide to Cars and the co-author of an upcoming book. You know, we love sharing our insights with you. We love getting your insights and your questions back as an audience, but there are so many cool, dynamic people in the auto industry. We really enjoyed talking to someone else, and we hope you do too. So Elizabeth, first, thank you so much for joining us on Talking Cars and taking the time to chat with us today. We really appreciate it. We've shared, your varied work in the automotive journalism and industry. So we have all shared at one time or another how we got here. How did you get where you're at?
Oh, well, thank you guys for having me. It's really exciting to be part of this podcast. Basically, I grew up in Michigan. My whole family pretty much worked in the automotive industry, whether they were engineers or mechanics or, my grandma did data entry for GM. Just through and through, we had a pole barn full of classic cars. My dad was a real big fan of American muscle. So we had Barracudas, we had a Mustang, we had a Trans Am. All the good stuff, basically, everything you could possibly want. And I grew up just being out in the garage with him. We always had automotive publications around. I mean, we had like stacks and stacks of like Car and Driver from forever ago that just, accumulated. So I was out there from the time I could, stand, holding the wrench, trying to do whatever I could to help. That coincided a little bit later with my love of writing and reading. That was like the only other thing I did with my time when I was a kid was cars and reading. So as I got older, I realized I can be one of those people who puts those two things together and writes about cars. It took a while to get there, but it finally did. So it's been an exciting journey so far.
That's so cool. So cool. Did you envision, when you did your journalism or education, were you saying, I want to write about cars, or that came later? I'm just curious.
That actually came a lot later. My initial goals, I've actually gone to school for creative writing. I did not go to school for journalism. I wanted to be a novelist, and I still do. And I felt like the journalism work actually kind of popped up in my life. So I started writing on my own blog about my experiences as a woman going to racing events. And Jalopnik scoped that out. They asked if they could republish it on their website, and I said, sure. I worked a little bit with Red Bull for their American publications online. And then it just kind of spiraled into realizing this could be a really viable career option, which was, it was great. I could not complain about, it was serendipitous.
Oh, that's great. I want you to know I have a 67 Mustang in my garage, and I say all the time, it's the only cool thing about me is that Mustang that's in my garage.
The 67's a good year. We had, I think it was an 80s or 90s one, so it was really boxy and kind of ugly, but it was our child.
That's right. They do become your children. So you touched on women in the automotive industry, and one of your certainly greatest accomplishments is this Girl's Guide to Cars. Mm-hmm. I'm curious why you think, and Emily and I have talked about this too, and Ryan for that matter too, is why do we need a girl's guide for cars? What is different about how maybe women look for car information than men, for example?
Yeah, I think a Girl's Guide to Cars kind of started out initially with this thought process that 85% of car purchases are influenced by women, whether women are actually doing the purchasing or, are a significant part of the process of figuring out what car you want to buy for the family. And when you look at the general automotive media landscape, it's very enthusiast driven. And most people who drive cars aren't enthusiasts. Most people get a car because they have to commute to work. You're not getting you're not getting a 67 Mustang to get groceries with. Right. That's just not how that works. And so A Girl's Guide to Cars was a little bit of the, what do moms want? What do women want? This other way of looking at cars from a very practical, real world perspective. Where do you put your purse? Where do you put the kids? Where do the car seats go? Can you fit groceries in here? All that other stuff that, is the livelihood of a car, not necessarily. Like, it doesn't really matter to a lot of people how fast their car goes from 0 to 60. It's a cool stat if you have a fast car. But for the most part, you just need something, do you need it to get up to highway speeds quickly, or do you not? They're more of those decisions that need to be made. And so that's the way we've been looking at it, is from this real life perspective. We call it a girl's guide to cars. And that's, not just women are experiencing cars in this way. There's a whole new generation of drivers who aren't enthusiasts. They don't know how to drive a manual transmission. They don't know how to work on a car. Exactly. Like, it's not a thing that people really do anymore. It's a completely different landscape. And so we've, it's called A Girl's Guide to Cars, but we have, we publish men. We talk to men about what they want to do. We talk to dads, younger guys who just need something to get on the road with. It's a completely different way of looking at it than, the enthusiast perspective. If you want to know stats, you can go to Car and Driver. They'll give you everything you need to know. If you want to know how the car is going to, fit in your driveway or the parking garage, you come to A Girl's Guide to Cars.
That's cool.
That's great. I do think there's a language difference too. Like you touched on it. People, when you're talking to an enthusiast and you say 0 to 60 in 6.2 seconds, that means something.
Yeah.
But when I'm
say how much horsepower it has or whatever.
Yeah. But people will say to me, women will say to me more often, I don't care about its acceleration. And I'm like, oh yeah, you do. Yes. Like you say, when you're merging into a highway or you want to pass somebody to get, around, you do care about acceleration. You just don't know it. Ryan and Emily, even, one of our jobs is we get asked about cars all the time, be it at a party. Ryan, do you find when you're talking to a buddy versus maybe a mom or a cousin or an aunt of how you talk about cars, is it very different?
Yeah. I mean, well, the first thing I approach is, what do you drive now? And I kind of feel it out because, well, I don't want to insult anyone by what they already have, but yeah, I mean, their priorities are different, right? I mean, I have friends that we're gearheads. We grew up together, autocrossing and racing around in cars, and we're the first thing we're talking about is the motor, the power, what it has for a motor and transmission, and we're upset that there's no more manuals, that kind of stuff. And then other people, I'm asking, like, are you commuting? Where do you work? How far do you commute to work? Do you have kids? All these kinds of questions, because those are the important questions, like Elizabeth said. And I'm not surprised you get, some men and other people that are checking this out, because it's a generational thing. Some of the younger kids today, I'm calling them kids. I mean, I'm still a kid, I guess. I'm 35, but some of these younger individuals, they don't care. Guys, they don't even care about cars. They're not that interested in, I couldn't wait to drive a car. Like, it was like, that was the most liberating thing that ever happened. I had a 1986 BMW 3 Series that my dad was a mechanic, and he just acquired this thing, and it was a hunk of junk, but I loved it. And I drove that. I learned how to drive in that car. No ABS, no, manual transmission, no stability control, bald tires. It was a learning tool, if anything. But it's
like the vision of safety.
But growing up, I mean, all my friends, everyone, even the girls, we were into that, and it doesn't. The landscape has changed for sure. I can understand that, but it's nice to have a place like that to go to for that kind of information, for sure.
Yeah, the livability is really key, because a lot of people, like, unless you live in the city or something where you can walk to your grocery store, or like, you're in a real small town and you're close to Main Street or something like that, like, you need a car to be able to do your day-to-day tasks, to, like, get food for your family, take the kids to school, take yourself anywhere, So it's important that there's, like, practical function available to you in your vehicle. And while it's great that there are publications and there are websites that really are geared towards the gearheads and towards the enthusiasts, like they get their niche, but I think recognizing that that's more of a niche, right? That's not like your mainstream consumer needs to know, like, how much crap can I fit in my trunk? And like, if I have to do, if I want to go on a vacation or something, or my leg's going to get super cranked up because there's like not enough cabin space, they need to know like the day-to-day living kinds of things about a car. And I don't know like you guys are saying, I don't think anymore that it's just like the women who care about that. I think there's a lot of people who care about that.
Yeah.
And they want to know from like practical experience of like, I've been in this car and I kept it for a week and I, did my life in it, which is where like your guide and the reviews that we provide too, from us being able to use the test cars, for our day-to-day stuff, like we're able to add those anecdotes of like, yeah, I could throw like the stroller and, the toddler bike and whatever else and like, 3 or 4 grocery bags back there. And it was great. Like everything fit kind of thing. They need to know that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I think it's really underrated that we don't really talk about it. I mean, there are so many SUV reviews in this world that just complain about how many SUVs there are. And it's not so much like, but what does it do? Like, what does this one offer that something else doesn't? And we try to highlight those aspects to say like, this is probably a car for someone somewhere, whether we like it or not. Personally, someone will probably enjoy this vehicle. And we try to like take that down into real people terms. Like one of our highest performing posts is what is torque. People don't know what that is. They look at that number and it just kind of skims right over their head. But it's important. You need to know those torque numbers. You need to know horsepower. If you want a nice docile ride for you and the kids, you probably don't want a Dodge Charger Hellcat. If you need to get climb a steep hill, you need a little bit of a higher torque number. If you live in the mountains, it's going to be a completely different situation than if you live in, a flat plain where you can see your dog running away for 3 days. Like it's a whole different world. That's like what we're trying to bring into the conversation is what does that mean? Like this has 400 horsepower. What does that feel like to you? What is, the language that we're going to use to describe it, and to also take it away a little bit from the language that traditionally gets used in the automotive industry. Women apparently don't like the word hauling. We've found that any posts we have with that word in the title, they don't like it. I don't know why. It just doesn't perform as well. They like other things, towing, it's a family vehicle, not a family hauler. There's other ways that needs to be framed to kind of, hauling a family tends to be considered almost a more masculine thing. Women are like, we transport the family. There's these little subtle differences in language that
one almost sounds like a burden versus
exactly.
It's like, oh God, I got to take them again with me. Don't they stay put?
Exactly. And even if mom thinks it is a burden to have to take the kids to soccer practice or whatever, like they still don't want to frame it in that perspective. So there are these like subtle differences that come into play where it's just taking the cues from our audience and like what they want, and then putting that into the reviews, all the way down to like the language. It matters on like all these crazy levels I never would have thought of, but people like it to be something that they understand.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny though, you say, I've shared on the podcast that we are in the horse world, and I will tell you, those women care about hauling. When they've got 6 horses and a trailer behind them, they actually like that word. So again, there's all different types of what people are doing. So one of the questions too, Elizabeth, is you alluded to 85% of car purchases are influenced by women in some way, either for themselves, influencing a family decision. We certainly don't see 85% representation in automotive manufacturers, for sure. How do you feel, either in the time you're in the industry, are women represented more so or better than at other times?
I think we've got to a point in, kind of our social existence where women are much better placed in society than they ever have been before. but there are still industries where there's a very, masculine dominance. And the automotive world is definitely one of those worlds. And it may not even be an intentional thing. People, I like to compare myself to some of my male colleagues, especially at Jalopnik, based on the emails we get, because it's taken a lot longer. It took me almost 5 years of working consistently to establish myself as a reputable voice. Whereas, we've just hired some men and they were taken at fact right off the bat. They didn't have to work for it quite as hard as I did. It's a little bit of a different thing. They still get called out on like bad takes and, terrible opinions, but there's a whole different kind of experience that men have getting into this industry. And you see that from all levels, whether that's engineering or marketing, anything. There is a tendency to assume that a man knows a little bit more. We have those gendered assumptions, those carry into everything. We assume women are better at cooking than men. Like there are these things that follow us wherever we go in life. There's been a lot of change. There are female CEOs, there are women everywhere in the automotive industry, but there's still a lot fewer than men. So it's gotten a lot better. There's still a lot of work that we can do.
Yeah, I think back even to, like my engineering classes. And I remember actually doing a count one time it was a big lecture, like Engineering 101. I don't even remember. It was like 250 people in this lecture hall. 6 of them were women. So, so I have 2 questions. Ryan, you're probably the most recent in an engineering environment. Do you see that ratio as any better?
So I will say it wasn't that recent, but it's been a few years now. But when I was there, it was I think in any of my actual engineering classes, I mean, when you're mixed, you have math classes and all the other stuff, chemistry. There was, in actual engineering classes, I don't think there was a single female. I went to a community college. It was smaller classes. That being said, like you said, Elizabeth, these things kind of follow you. Like there was it was a nursing school as well. So I was the only guy in the chemistry class. Mm-hmm. These stuff like this. But I hope to think, I want to think that it's better today. This goes back, quite, at least 10 years, right? So I would like to think it's better today. I don't know for sure. But it kind of goes either way at times though, because I know when I was in high school, there was my tech class, we built an electric car, electrothon. Built this car from scratch, drive it around a track. How many laps can you do? And there was a girl in my tech class, and she was the only girl in there, but she was awesome. I mean, she was actually, to be honest with you, she took charge. She was telling all of us, because the guys were all running around like, we know how to do this, but nobody organized it. She was like, you do this, you do that. And she was working on a part herself, and it was tremendous. And, I didn't there wasn't a lot of that in college, but, like Jen said, I mean, that's a pretty good ratio there. I mean, that's crazy. That many kids or students, and there's only 6 women, but
right.
Yeah.
It depended too on the engineering discipline. Like when I went to school for biomedical engineering, but my concentration was biomechanics. So as part of my curriculum, I had to take certain mechanical engineering courses. And in my biomed classes, it tended to be a lot more evenly split across the genders. But in my mechanical engineering classes, there were fewer women. And my friends that were like in chemical engineering, I think one of the girls I knew who was a year ahead of me, there was like only 2 other girls in like all her chemie classes, which I thought was crazy, right? And, it just really depended where you were and like what disciplines you were pursuing. Biomed had a lot of people that were also doing it as like a pre-med. So you tended to have more mix there. But, I'm hoping that like as there are more of us that are stepping into these like non-traditional roles, like Elizabeth is doing. Like Jen started off in tires. Yeah. That's pretty non-traditional for a woman. But, I'm hoping that as more of us do that like the next generation does feel like, hey, I have a lot of options. I can literally pursue anything that I want to.
I think one of the things about what I've been doing is I work for Jalopnik and I work for a Girl's Guide to Cars. So there's the more traditional enthusiast aspect. And then there's also this kind of broader perspective. So it shows that there's this ability to do both, that we can take like a traditional automotive journalist and make them think outside the box a little bit more. And that's the part that I think is really crucial, because it is that stereotype of, women don't like the color, they don't like, the feel of the interior, whatever the case may be. But, there's practical things. I like a bright, obnoxious colored car. There's no shame in that. So do a lot of other people. I also like to have leather seats because I make a lot of messes. It's that's the way it is. It doesn't.
She's got a really good
reason.
Exactly.
Like, and most women do. Like, I grew up with obnoxious colored cars. Like, I have to have it. It can't just be gray now. Like, I refuse. But, a lot of other people either feel the same way or, they feel similarly. They feel like, my mom always gets the same shade of gray no matter what car she buys, because it's familiar and nondescript. And she's like, I want to be like one of 7 other people in the parking lot. She wants to blend in. It's this.
Maybe she's a spy.
Maybe she is. She could be.
So, Ryan, you talked about young. We're women. I want to know. So I tell the story of the time that I was at Chrysler and they asked me to make copies. Like, they literally asked me to make copies. And we were like supplying them at the time. I was a supplier. So I made the copies. But it was a little odd. They just assumed. So I'm curious, Elizabeth and Emily, from a woman's standpoint, and Ryan, you just said 16 years ago. That made you a very young tire engineer at the time. What was your best story, Elizabeth, of, hey, I do know what I'm talking about, and kind of stepping out and somebody realizing like, oh, wow, she's amazing. And maybe your worst story, when were you asked to make copies or coffee or something? I'm curious.
I've had quite a few. I feel like there were a lot more stumbling blocks that were a little bit demoralizing than there were those like vindictive moments of like, yeah, I did it. My first ever press event was for the Hyundai Veloster N. I very poorly drive stick shift, but they had marketed it kind of as a driving school. So I was like, this is, I let my editors know that ahead of time. But I got there's a very specific kind of testosterone-driven crowd of journalists who commented on what I was wearing and told me that it was very unprofessional that I was wearing essentially, activewear, which I was like, it's the desert and it's hot and I'm driving all day. Like, I'm not going to get dressed up. But I was like, that's unprofessional of you. And so I've kind of carried that in the back of my mind ever since then when I'm getting dressed for any events that I'm going to. What are people going to think of it? There was a similar situation at the New York International Auto Show. I was going to sit down for an Out for a May event, and I asked someone, is that seat next to you taken? And he said, no, you can sit here, and then patted his lap.
Oh my God.
And it was one of those things where I was
That's
like,
not even funny.
it's hard to deal with in the moment. Like, I laughed because, like, what else are you supposed to do?
What else do you do?
And women are, like, taught to diffuse the situation. I don't know who this person is. Maybe there's someone I should respect, So there's been stuff like that where it's been those very obviously, like, demoralizing moments. The good ones usually come when I've written something I'm very proud of.
Right.
And the comments usually will reflect that of like, I didn't realize, you knew this much, XYZ, which I would hope at this point, like, you'd maybe assume that I would know what I'm doing, but whatever, it's fine. But there was one story I wrote recently. There was a 7-year-old boy named Frankie Fazzari who was killed during a race in Watkins Glen in 1952. He is the reason why races came off of public roads and were placed onto permanent circuits, and closed circuits that no one can get, they're not regular roads people are driving. Most people don't really know that story. So I tried to hunt down as much as I could about what had happened, where things had gone after that, what the family is doing. And there's like no recognition for this boy anywhere in the town of Watkins Glen. And that's a town that very, it historically prizes all of the depth of racing that it's created. So there was a lot of great feedback on something like that, where it was like, that's a nice that's a nice feeling, because I felt like I was doing something like beyond me, like this poor child. Like, we should remember him. He's the reason racing is what it is now. So it was something like that where people were very like, oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that. Thank you. I think I want this town to also recognize where this road racing came from. Those are the moments that are usually the best. But unfortunately, they always feel a lot more private than the ones that kind of get you down a little bit, if that makes sense.
Well, there may be more of them, unfortunately, still. Yeah, and it sounds like you've absolutely let your accomplishments speak for themselves, especially in like a motorsports arena where, I mean, it's enough in the everyday, automotive world, but when you get to motorsports, it's even more skewed. And I think that's fantastic what you're doing.
There's been a lot of those crazy moments where like I'm at a race and like I've had people take photos of me at races, and like there was a man who like surrounded me with his group of friends, and like wouldn't let me leave until I gave him my phone number. These like absolutely ridiculous situations, but then that's been kind of balanced where a group of female friends and I went to a race, and there was a little girl there. And she was so excited to see, like, these women are doing this stuff. They're talking to drivers. They're taking photos. They're working. That was awesome. That was before I was actually doing journalism. And then when I started working at Jalopnik, her dad left a comment to say, like, that was my daughter. Like, you guys were awesome. She was so excited. Like, we gave her, like, we'd gotten stuffed animals from one of the teams, and we gave them to her. And she was just like, had the time of her life. And those are the moments where like you live for it, but there's still those downers. But then I still think of that little girl and like, I hope she's doing all right.
Well, we appreciate your pioneering, and you probably changed. She could go 20 years from now. She's going to say, I met this woman at a race one time and I wanted to be her. That's the best. You're right. Go ahead, Em.
I was going to say, like what you were saying before about being pigeonholed, right? Probably like my worst experiences have been so I work in automotive safety. My dissertation work was in that, and obviously now my career work is in that. There's a lot of different ways you can, tackle automotive safety, but the assumption that since I'm a woman, I must obviously work in child passenger safety or be concerned about children being safe in cars because I must have children of my own.
It's actually kind of funny that you bring that up, because I was just thinking the other day, I was in a Formula SAE team in college, so we designed and built our own race car. There were quite a few women on the team, but they were predominantly put in, I guess, more feminized roles. Like the one woman was working in ergonomics. That was her job, was to make sure the car was comfortable. And that all the touch points and everything. And that, like, she's brilliant. She still is. She does great engineering work. And it also felt like our drivers were all like 6 feet tall and she was like 4'8". It just felt strange that they had put her in this role of prioritizing comfort and like the touch and the feel of the car as opposed to the differential, the engine, like even the body work, things like that, where she had, it was almost that same pigeonholing where, especially because she's so petite. Like all of our drivers are these very lanky men.
That's a perfect driver height for an F1 car.
Exactly. I was like, she should be the driver. Like she made the car comfortable for her.
We met Danica Patrick one time. Remember, Ryan? She's little. Yeah. She's tiny.
Well, listen, everybody on everybody on TV
God.
is smaller than you think, but she was.
That's right.
I learned that a long time ago. But she's a petite girl, which is perfect for that, really.
Yeah. So I appreciate what you do. I appreciate what you do, Em. I appreciate what you do, Ryan, but just not as much.
That's okay.
So I'm gonna change subject a little bit, a little rapid fire. So, Elizabeth, and these are questions we have asked on Talking Cars of each other, and we've asked of our audience. So it's exciting to have your insights a little bit. What car, what technology, what are you most excited to be writing about, covering right now? I
think the development of batteries for electric cars has got to be the top right now. As a society, we like hit this point where we like decided batteries were good enough. And like when you compare battery technology to everything else we do in this world, it's very inefficient. And so it's been a lot of fun to watch that grow and develop and to see we're gaining more out of batteries. It's a very slow process. We're still not great at it, but that's what I've been most excited about. I think that's going to be where we're going to see huge breakthroughs in the future. As soon as we're going to, we're hitting those more efficient battery lives and longer ranges, quicker charging times, that's going to be, I think, the next big change we actually see in the automotive industry.
So maybe we're to the same subject, but what about 5-8 years from now? This is a subject we've said to our listeners, like, what are we going to be talking about 8 years from now? 5 years from
now? I think it's still going to be EVs.
Same thing.
I think we're going to get to a point where I don't think in 5 to 10 years there will be a majority of EVs on the road, but I actually think we'll probably be talking about automakers who are producing predominantly gasoline-powered engines as being the anomaly at that point, as opposed to the more electrified versions, even if it's a hybrid or plug-in hybrid, something that has that supplemental electric power. I think the weird thing is going to be 10 years from now that there are still automakers that are kind of holding on to conventional combustion engines.
Well, I think there'll still be a market, don't you?
Yes. I think there's still going to be a market. I think there's going to be... We do a lot of moralizing, like journalists and media, and like I think there's going to be a big to-do about anyone who's like opting against it. Like Ferrari, people like to trash talk Ferrari because like they're like, we're never going to do anything electric, which is fine. You do you, but I think we could do without that. But that and the weight of batteries as well.
Oh yeah,
like they're so heavy right now. To have something that's way lighter that could do what we need it to do is going to be completely different. And the environmental aspect, when we can start recycling batteries.
Right. That's what I was getting at, the disposal side.
Yeah. Rather than, we're doing a lot of terrible mining to get those minerals and those ores and everything that we need to put into batteries to make them, to make our environmentally friendly cars. It's a little bit of a paradox. Once we're able to kind of take those used batteries, reuse all those other bits, recycle them, or dispose of them properly, or create some new way of powering a battery, it'll be a completely, like, that's going to be a game changer.
That part worries me.
I do think too the infrastructure isn't in place, so that's going to be another big holdout until that's in place in the majority of the country. That you still are going to have people that want a fully gas powered vehicle because they don't trust that they can get what they need with the EVs.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, I still worry about it because like I like that I can drive anywhere, and like pretty much anywhere I stop will have a gas station around there. And I do, unfortunately, a lot of very long distance traveling. So driving across the country, I worry like those long charge times, those long waits, not having a guaranteed place to stop that kind of coincides with what you want to do with your drive. Those are the hard ones.
Okay. Future classic. You talked about your Barracudas and your Mustangs. What's out today that's going to be a classic 25 years from now?
I think about this a lot, and I have a really hard time with this question because technology is such a key part of our cars now and they're not just car specific technologies, but connected to smartphones and other personal devices, that it's hard to imagine a classic car being created now, because we're like, how do you use a map app on a car that's 10 years old that doesn't connect to your phone anymore? Like, how do you like, who knows what Sirius XM will be in 10 years? Maybe it's not going to transmit to the cars that have it now. It's like, I cannot think of a car that I could like really guarantee is being a future classic because of those. It's so dated. My husband drives a 2014 Cadillac ATS, and I look at that infotainment system and I'm like, this is awful. Like, this is so out of date. It's so like clunky.
Cadillac
it's so hard
Q.
to use.
Yeah.
Oh, the worst.
I don't miss that. Yeah.
Yeah. The way that our phones are going to talk to the car, especially, I just drove the Ford Maverick, and there's no like map app directly in it, especially in the base model. You have to connect your phone to it. So you have to have compatibility in that respect to make that function. Whereas, otherwise, I think that was a great little truck. And I think it could be a classic, but then there's that part that feels like such a glaring problem that 3 years from now, who knows if your iPhone will connect.
And we've said to Elizabeth, unique body styles, things like that. But what happens when they're over-the-air updates? They can't be.
Exactly.
They can't be classics. That Barracuda and my Mustang are super simple. It's just parts. There's no connectivity anywhere.
Yeah, I have a 2013 Mazda 2, and I insist that that's the perfect car ever made because it was the last year before there were screens and everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's an aux cord port, which even that now is not a thing for most phones. But I was this is a car that is gonna last me 10 years because there's no screen that's gonna get out of date. I don't have Bluetooth in it, so I can't connect to anything. I can put a CD in. Thankfully, I still have some. So that's it.
I was gonna say, do you have any more?
My husband and I, we bought a 1994 Suburban, so we actually even have cassette tapes.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So there you go. You just answered the question. A 2014 Mazda 2.
Yes. That's the pinnacle. It's over after that.
Oh, yeah. It's all downhill after that. So for our listeners who want to hear more about you, how do we best follow you? We've said A Girl's Guide to Cars, but anywhere else social that our audience may want to connect with you?
Twitter is probably the best way. That's at Eliz, _Blackstock. I have an Instagram as well, but it's not worth it unless you want to follow me for dogs. So
that's
that's it.
Which we may. So
that's Eliz A. Blackstock, all one word.
Okay. And anything you want to share? Any closing thoughts or anything for our listeners, for your audience?
I just want to say thank you guys for having me on to chat. It's been exciting. Stay tuned. I'm publishing a book with a coworker on Rich Energy, which was a very strange Formula One sponsor that didn't seem like they had a product. That should be coming out in 2022. And we have a website for that called richenergybook.com.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, back at you. We really, really enjoyed, like I say, we get to listen and talk to each other all the time. So it's really fun to have a new face, some new insights. And we really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you guys so much.
So you guys, she was even cooler than I thought. That was such a great interview. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah, she's awesome. Yeah.
She's very fun and so easy to talk to.
So easy to talk to, so insightful, and just a different take. I really enjoyed it. I hope you guys in the audience enjoyed it as much as we do. And next time we'll return to our regular format. Thanks always for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.